Alright, let's play Space Empires 5. This is going to be turn 0 of a new multiplayer game in the Balance mod version 1.26. The version 1.25 Plus series has just come out, and we are going to start a new multiplayer game in this mod. And I am the host of a multiplayer game with, I believe, 5, 6, maybe 7 people. I am going to walk you through the game setup that we are going for. And I'm going to show you the generation and the reasoning behind the generation of my empire. And after that, I'm going to play the first turn. So our game name is String Theory. I just had to put a game name, and String Theory was a sci-fi term that sprang into my mind, so that's it. This is the game setup file, so I've pre-arranged or pre-selected all the settings. We are going to be playing a medium-sized map in a pretty standard default spiral arm quadrant. We are going to play a medium map with notably no AIs on it. The AI number is going to be off. Generate computer-controlled empires and neutral empires is offline, so it's just going to be players and their player empires here. The other game settings are relatively default. We are going to go with medium racial points, but we are going to go with high technology points. We are going to have 500,000 research points to spend right at the start, which is going to differentiate all the empires from each other quite a bit right from the get-go. We're going to play with all scores visible, because we can already see the scores of all other players in the game files if we do not specifically separate them out. This way it's easier for all of us not to have to cheat to see them in quotations. Otherwise, it's pretty default. One good starting planet with high resources, medium technology cost. In addition to that, high starting research, which means that we are still going to see new tech. If we went for high tech cost and just one starting planet, it would take forever for us to actually start to get new technology beyond our starting tech, so we went with medium tech cost. Other game options are relatively normal, going with high event frequencies, but only high severity, so no exploding stars and planets. Maximum units are at maximum, and we are going to play with intelligence on. Lots of games turn intelligence off because it's not that impactful a mechanic. Multiplayer settings are unset for this because they're already done. They have to be done by the host when he generates the actual game file. I've already done that. I'm just showing this after the fact. Okay, I'm going to load my empires. These are the empire files for all other players. And this is my empire file. I've chosen to play the Romulan Star Empire, and they're all boomers. Romulan Star Empire, everybody knows. I'm going to enter my very secret password here. And I've called them the boomers, no, not because hated old people, but because I have chosen a strategy that relies on economic boom. Since it's a medium map and the amount of players we have is relatively limited, I've decided that it would be a good idea to start expanding as fast as possible at the start, really do a colonization rush, and then build up your economy as fast as you can without immediately trying to go to war with anybody or the like. So I'm going to try to avoid early war and grow my economy, colonize as fast as I can, to grab as much of the medium-sized map as I can. Okay. The Romulan Star Empire, everybody knows. Many of the players in this game chose to pick default chipsets. I've used one of the Star Trek chipsets. Race details are uninteresting. I've chosen ice and hydrogen as my planet type, not rock oxygen, just to mix it up. I believe I just picked default one. I picked random ones. So that usually rock oxygen, especially if you go for vanilla race or something, is something that more races have than others, so you are more likely to be in conflict with others for rock oxygen planets than not. So I just picked some random planet types and atmosphere types. For government, I didn't pick anything fancy. I just picked the standard oligarchy, which doesn't have any advantages or disadvantages. For society, however, I chose the mechanics. Mechanics have a research penalty. Research is actually something that I want, but I chose to have a penalty here, so I get to have lower maintenance costs. Maintenance costs means I can field more units at once, which means I can really take advantage of my large economy once I get it and field a fuck ton of ships. For racial traits, I've chosen the space yard increase. That's a relatively conservative pick. I've chosen the physical weakness as a penalty because it's an easy compromise point. It gives you a penalty for ground combat. And ground combat is usually decided not by who has 10% more or less ground combat strength, but rather by who's able to deploy units or not. And ship crew strength, which only matters for boarding combat, which is also an edge case. So it's an easy compromise point to get 500 points to spend on something useful like 10% build rate. My other picks are propulsion experts and advanced storage. Propulsion experts is just that universally useful 1 extra movement points for everything. And that advanced storage technique means you get to have 20% extra facility space. It means all your planets are going to be 20% bigger, which enables you to have 20% more mines or research facilities, 20% more economy. That's where the boom really comes into play there. I have bigger planets than everybody. And if I really focus on having more of them at the start and they're bigger than everybody else, I'm going to be in a great position. How well I actually do will heavily depend on map generation, but that's always the risk you take. Most notably, I have not taken any of the fancy racial techs. I've not taken organic manipulation, psychic, crystallology, or any of that. None of the fancy new interdimensional knowledge tree that is in the new version of Balance Mod. None of that. I am going to have only default technologies. For the technologies, remember we have the high research points start with 500,000 points. I've chosen economic techs down here at the bottom. I've gotten 3 levels in research and a couple levels in the extraction techs each, just to start with. And for defense, I have opted to go with chemistry 2, which unlocks me plasma missiles. So I've gotten 3 levels of plasma missiles. That is going to be my early game warfare strategy, my early game defense. I've gotten these plasma missiles and I've gotten 2 levels in fighters. I can deploy small ships that are going to be fast with my +1 movement speed, and I can deploy fighters from colonies that I've just colonized and create a defense that way. Otherwise, I've just gotten a few levels of space yards, small ship construction. I've opted to go for small ships at the start. In the new version of Balance Mod, you can decide to just go into small ships, medium ships, or big ships. You do not need to do them in sequence anymore. You don't need to finish small ships before you can do medium ships. You can just research a higher level of construction and just go into medium or small ships right away if you want to. But I've opted to go to small ships to just make the early game explorers and scouts and colony ships more efficient. And I've also opted to go for Ion Engines 5. Ion Engines, you only need to have level 3 to unlock contra-terrain engines, the next best level. If I have only Ions in 2, I don't have the option to research contra-terrain. Once you have 3, you can already get the next best engine, the next better engine tech, but I've chosen to spend it all into Ion engines, which is going to make those engines very efficient. And especially these Ion engines are very cost efficient, which is going to be a bonus for the early game colony ships that I'm going to be building. Makes them a little cheaper and makes them faster to get where they're going. Another thing to make them get where they're going is the stellar harnessing. I've maxed out stellar harnessing at level 6, which is going to give me the +2 movement speed solar sails, which in addition to the +1 from the racial trait means I have +3 speed for all ships that have a solar sail. And of course I get the solar panels, which means I can make scouts right away that can cover the entire map because they can just generate new supplies on the fly. Then I have a few levels of armor just for defense and to make the plasma missiles that I have withstand more fire from point defense. And then the next big thing that I have is the sensors at level 8 and scanners at level 4. That is the reason why I've picked physics 3 up here. That's where some of the points went, physics 3, so I can have scanners. These mean that I have sensors that can cover 4 hexes and scanners that can cover 4 hexes far, which is going to give me an intelligence advantage on any of the player opponents I encounter. It's going to immediately tell me what components they have, what tech levels they have, which means less guesswork. Having an intelligence advantage is always a good thing in a PvP game like this, and I hope to be able to make the most of that. Just by being able to deploy these ships that can scan enemy ships right from the start and position them in nebulas and such inside their territory. Aside from that, there's nothing else groundbreaking. Of the economy tags, I have the small ships that are focused on and the scanners. Then a few defense tags like the plasma missiles. I've gotten here ECM at level 4 because if I'm facing high level opponents, I want to have combat sensors and ECM at least a medium level. I have those 40% extra to hit and to miss. Because otherwise, a high level opponent that spent all his 500,000 points into warfare technology would probably be able to just steamroll me. So I wanted to have just a little bit of ECM tech and combat sensor tech there. Then I have a couple extra points spent into things like troop weapons, so I can have the rocket pods on troops. And in general, just I've started with mines, so I can immediately build mines and minesweepers and troops to fighters level 2. This unlocks me, I believe, better engines for the troops and better afterburners for the plasma missile fighters that I'm going to be building. Okay, that's it for my tech choices, and that's it for my empire. I left the history file empty. Everybody can read up as much as they want about the Romulan Empire online. I don't think I need to give anybody a blurb for this in-game. Alright, that's it for my empire, and see you again in turn 1.